Zainey friends, and welcome to another episode of App-A-Geek, where we do some recipes for you based on pop culture themed cookbooks. This week we are doing the Snacking Dead, which is a parody off of The Walking Dead. We have tested both of the recipes in this cookbook that we have done, so this is not just, you know, us figuring it out as we go like some of the other ones. And for this one, what we're doing is one called the Last Stand Skillet Cornbread with Honey Butter. And what's the other one?
The other one is going to be the Diesel Strength Quesadillas.
Yes, so we are going to be doing those. Make sure you follow us on social media down below because we do post pictures as we're testing out a lot of these recipes, and you don't want to miss out what is coming up.
That's really tasty stuff. We use this cornbread recipe now on. Like, we used to use a family cornbread recipe, and now this is the one we're using. Almost every week I make like a soup or a chili for dinner, and this has to go with it.
And what's really amazing is we've actually used this cookbook quite a few times doing some recipes. So at first I thought, I'm not really a meat eater, so I don't know if I'm going to really like this. But there are so many awesome recipes that come from this that I think you will definitely love this cookbook, no matter how picky of an eater that you are. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with the cornbread and get that in the oven before we start on the quesadillas for lunch. I'm hungry. We have the bowl with the dry ingredients in here, and what is it in there right now?
Well, right now what we have is some coconut flour. How much of that it said?
It says 2/3 cup.
2/3 of a cup of coconut flour, and then we've got this was 1 cup of yellow cornmeal.
Yeah, so basically the coconut flour though, that is not what we usually is in this recipe. But of course we like to switch out with better ingredients for you when we can. So then we have that cornmeal that's going to go right in there, and then we're going to put in some baking powder. We got about a tablespoon of that, and salt, which is about 1 1/4 teaspoons.
And that's why I already had the coconut flour in the bowl, because it's kind of fine and it tends to shoot everywhere if you pour it into stuff.
Now you have done this already once, right? This recipe twice. So in the next bowl we have over here, we're going to put the wet ingredients. This is what's called the biscuit method, when you have the dry ingredients in one and the wet ingredients in the other, and then you comb them together. Yes. So in this bowl, you're going to put sour cream. We got about a cup of sour cream in here. And actually, we did run out of sour cream, so we had to order more on Prime Now, because that's how you do it.
Yeah.
So the sour cream, we actually need more for the quesadillas that we're making later, so we had to,
We're working with it.
Sorry if I'm off camera right now. My shoulder is hurting a little bit, and I had to sit, so he's just going to cook while I read off the recipe.
Yep.
So we got the sour cream and then the milk. We have 1/2 cup. We're using 1/2 and 1/2. That's just what we use in this house because we need it for coffee in the morning. So we end up using the 1/2 and 1/2 for pretty much everything. We don't use milk a whole lot, so it's not reasonable for us to buy separate milk.
No.
And then we have honey. We got about 1/3 of a cup of honey. And this is actually organic honey that we bought at a farmer's market. And it came in a jar and everything. I just don't know that we're going to be using this again because it was really expensive for this honey. We try to get local because of our allergies, but we just ordered some more with our Prime Now order too for the honey butter that we are making for this recipe also. All right, and now it's some eggs. We just have 2 eggs. We already got those together. And lastly, baking soda, which is funny. It does go with the wet ingredients, even though it's kind of dry.
Yeah.
It does go with the wet.
And how much are we going to need of that?
For the baking soda, we need 1/4 teaspoon.
And that's also how it got me, because I totally didn't notice it in a different spot when I was measuring everything out. So, there we go.
All right, and then go ahead and whisk those wet ingredients together.
The honey is what makes the mixing of this part really hard, because it's just, it sloughs down, it just kind of makes everything kind of sluggish. And you typically want to just like make a little trough, a little hole for it to be in.
He watches a lot of Alton Brown cooking shows, so I I can tell a lot of the techniques that he is using to cook come from him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's nice when you have a cooking show that's nerdy, because then everything makes more sense.
Yeah, the science behind it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's kind of better combined now.
Mm-hmm. It says you take the cast iron skillet and melt the butter in it, swirling the pan, and then you pour the butter into the batter and stir to combine. Alright, so he's going to be using this cast iron skillet, which we will eventually be cooking our cornbread in. And he's going to be taking this stick of butter and melting it down and then putting it into the cornbread mixture. We love this cast iron skillet. This thing lasts for years.
And so we've got it all melted down. I'm going to pour it on in.
And then you're going to put the corn in there also?
Yep.
And he basically defrosted that corn in that little container. It's about 1/3 cup. Not a lot, but just enough to give it a nice like texture when we do the cornbread.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, normally when I made cornbread with the family recipe, I put like an entire bag in there. But this recipe doesn't quite need as much.
Alright, and after you've mixed that together, you're going to put it back in the skillet,
right,
and what happens there?
Well, you just make sure that it's completely flat and smooth. So now we're just going to spread it all the way around on the bottom. From there, we're just going to put it straight into the oven. We've already preheated it to 375 degrees. And from there, it's a waiting game.
So basically, if you are in the zombie apocalypse, I would say this would be a great one to do like over a fire, or if you can find a stove, it's very easy. You know, you literally just need fire and ingredients.
Yeah, and once we have it done, the cornbread's going to be it's going to hold itself together pretty well. This is a great vehicle for like having cheese on top, which we might put on a little bit close to the end. We'll get there. Or like jalapenos if you want something spicy. Alright, so we're going to start off by cooking some of our veg here. Now, in that very same recipe, it does talk about how in the zombie apocalypse, you're never going to have all the same ingredients that you want all the time, so you have to learn to adapt. That's what we're going to have here, because it calls for 1 small yellow onion, but what we had is red onion, so I did half of a large red onion.
What did you just put in the pan?
That is some coconut oil, just to we're going to be frying up all of these ingredients in the pan.
And why are we using coconut oil instead of olive oil?
Well, olive oil has a really low smoke point. So it actually, with enough heat, it chemically changes and starts becoming something else, and then it turns to smoke. Coconut oil, on the other hand, has a much higher smoke point. So it doesn't change chemically as much. It's a little healthier for you because of that.
So we got some of the coconut oil we're melting down, and then we're going to put in the onions.
And it also calls for red pepper, but we have green pepper, just because that's what's cheap. We're going to keep stirring this around until it all kind of softens up. The onions become translucent. About between 2 and 5 minutes. I'm also doing this at a slightly lower heat, so it'll kind of caramelize the onions more than it will just make them soft.
We are making the diesel stacked quesadillas from the Walking Dead cookbook. Alright, he's removing the veg from the pan and putting it aside because we're going to be using the pan to cook up the beef over there, which originally the recipe called for pork. So why are we using beef instead of pork?
Well, we've done a lot of looking into what meats are good for you and which ones aren't. Pork is one of those kinds of meats. Pigs don't properly filter out their waste like we do, and they eat a lot of really random nasty stuff. And so all of those toxins kind of build up inside the meat, so then you're going to eat it. In the other side, if you get grass-fed, hormone-free beef, it's not only going to be free of a lot of those toxins because they eat just grass and things like that, but also the hormone balance is really good because you don't just want the omega-3 fatty acids that we hear about all the time in the news. You're going to want to have also omega-6 fatty acids. And the omega-6 fatty acids and omega-3 fatty acids need to be in the right kind of balance. And if you get that balance, then your body has all of the fats it needs to make the hormones so your brain works right. Okay, so we're gonna brown off the beef, and we're going to add in a little bit of seasoning. We've got a half of a teaspoon of paprika and a quarter teaspoon of chili. It's cayenne chili.
Now that's a little bit of salt he's putting in there, well seasoned. I'm gonna put a little bit of that in the veg just now too, and then black pepper. And then you're gonna brown that off, right? Mm-hmm. We'll be back. Okay, so what's happening now?
Oh, well, right now we've got our beef already cooked off. We've already got our onions and our peppers. So we're gonna have to prep up the tortillas for the quesadillas. We're just gonna take some already melted up coconut oil, and we're going to just kind of drizzle it over a little bit and brush it with the back of the spoon. You could also use just a brush with this, but we don't know what happened to ours. So now we've got all of them oiled up. We're going to be putting them in. We've already got the broiler running. Oh, that's hot. And put them in there. And we'll be back in about 2 minutes with some nicely toasted tortillas. Okay, so now we've got them all nice and toasty and crisp. So we're going to be using them for different things. This one first is going to have the meat. So we're going to take a little bit of this now. It's asked for a half a pound of meat. So we don't need all of this if we don't want to.
Because that's a pound.
This is 1 pound, it asked for a half a pound. Now, on top of that, we're also going to be putting some of our cheese. And we've got some shredded taco blend cheese to be used here. And our vegetable mixture, we're going to be putting on one of these over here. We're going to top that with cheese as well. This layer here is just for the top, so that's not going to matter a huge amount to put anything on there. But this layer is going to be just a cheese layer. And what we've got for that is some sharp cheddar that we kind of minced up to make it nice and fine. Try and get it as flat as possible over the tortilla. And it'll melt out over it.
Now obviously if this was a real zombie apocalypse, spending an hour making these in the kitchen might not be the best use of our time. However,
there's a few things that you can do. One, if you're working as a group, some people can be out hunting, others can be staying and doing the cooking. So just adapt for your group. That's going to be what you have to do with all zombie apocalypse cooking. We're going to be putting it right back into the broiler, so I hope you didn't turn that off.
Don't turn it off.
Don't turn it off.
How long is it going in for?
It's going to be another 2 to 5 minutes. However, we just want to watch it and make sure that all the cheese is melted.
By the way, fun fact, we have done so much cooking today, there is all of our dishes that we still have to do. All right, what's happening now?
Now we stack. So we've got a cheesy layer going on top of a beefy layer.
And of course the cheese acts as a binder.
Mm-hmm. And then we have the veggie layer on top of that cheese. And lastly, we've got the top. Now that we've got them all kind of put together, we're just going to push it down. Probably best to do it with like a slotted spoon or something like that, because these are still hot.
Make sure it all melts together and the cheese binds it.
The cheese is like the force. It surrounds us, binds us, and then they're done. You could then top it with sour cream or salsa. But we've got one other thing to show you that came with this recipe that I already made up ahead of time that I think you might really enjoy. Alright, so here we have our diesel strength quesadillas. Now with a little bit of sour cream there, you'll also notice these little jalapeno slices. Now they're not just straight up jalapeno, because with this recipe came one recipe for the specialty kind of jalapeno slices. So what I did is I just took the jar, poured out all the juice, and then I added lemon juice and a half of a teaspoon of stevia and some salt. And that makes this a little sweet, a little tangy, and spicy. So it's not just one flavor, it's got a whole bunch of different levels to it, and it goes really well with these quesadillas.
So how do you think these quesadillas are overall, since we're probably not going to be eating it on camera because it's very messy?
Yeah, it is rather messy. Honestly, I personally would like it a little spicier, my personal preference, but I feel like it's good enough, especially since if you can then take that recipe and multiply it a few times, you've got tons of quesadillas for a party or for dinner.
Excellent. All right, now let's finish our cornbread.
Oh yes. So what we did is we took some butter, just 1 stick of butter, and 2 tablespoons of honey. We just kind of blended it together. The butter should not be melted. It should just be softened. So just while you're cooking everything else, just leave it sitting out. And then we just kind of whipped it together with a spatula. And that gives us a nice sweet honey butter that goes very well with our cornbread.
That is what we got for this. We got our quesadillas, we got our cornbread, and that is what we have from the Walking Dead cookbook. If you want to see anything else from this, comment down below. Tell us if you're interested or what other cookbooks we should be cooking from. Thank you so much for watching with us. Make sure you join us on Wednesdays, Fridays.
Sometimes Sundays.
Till then.
Today's Zainey.
Bye-bye.